The show starts off with an event that happens in the future. These two guys, we don't know who they are right now, but it's Detective Katagiri and reporter Jake Adelstein. They're in this really super tense meeting with the number 2 Yakuza member, and he's saying, "We know what story you're working on. You need to stop, or we're going to visit your family." And he says, "Well, do you mind if I smoke while I think about it?" And Yakuza Cheekbones here is staring him down as he lights a cigarette, and then it flashes back. So the year is 1999, which was kind of interesting because the book starts in 1993. You see that he teaches English classes, he's taking Aikido classes, which look really painful. He's studying really hard. He studies on the bus. He's now studying in this restaurant. He's studying so intently and is so focused that when the camera pulls back, you see the restaurant has gotten really busy and crowded, and he doesn't even notice, all the noise that's surrounding him. So he gets all stressed out because he's been studying so hard. So he goes to the club and he is dancing and jumping around, letting off some steam. He goes into this store and he's flipping through this magazine, and it's all these pictures of Yakuza members. So he lives in the apartment right above the store. And when you look at his walls, see how it's covered with these articles all about Yakuza. And then he sits right back down and he starts studying again. So again, you get the sense that he's really kind of obsessive about things. Pearl Jam's release was interesting music here, because at first I just thought it made sense time-wise. It was late 1990s, he's in his 20s, he's an American. Yeah, I'd be listening to Pearl Jam. But it was on the second watch that I really was paying attention to the lyrics. So I think there are some father issues we'll find out about later on. What he was studying for was this qualifying exam for the Micho Shimbun newspaper. And I probably mispronounced that, sorry. But you can see, it's very tense. You got tons of people in this room. Everybody's got to get dressed up. Then there's this whole long montage of him just taking the exam. So done, finished. He's the first one done. Feeling pretty pleased about everything. He's looking around. There's plenty of time. When you are finished and everybody was still working, you would think something's up. Picks up his exam and, oh shit, there was an entire back page that he didn't see. Oh, my heart sunk when I saw that. That is just the worst feeling. He looks like he's going to cry, and I don't blame him. But all hope is not lost. He gets called in for an interview. You learn that he's from Missouri. He went to college in Japan. He studied Japanese literature. They ask why he wants to be a crime reporter in Japan. Turns out his father was a coroner, so he has an interest in it. He scored well enough on his exam that, he wasn't disqualified. So they keep asking him questions. The one guy asks, "How do you feel about corporate loyalties?" Jake's like, "Yeah, great, love it." Then this guy at the end asks, "Do Jews eat sushi?" Jake says, "Sure, every day." And they get a load of this question.
ユダヤ人が世界経済を支配していると信じている人も多いけど、それについてはどう？
もしそうだとしたら、僕がここの給料で満足すると思いますか？
Good answer. This guy does not look amused, but the guy in the middle is like, good one. So he got the job. So he's walking through the newsroom on his first day, and of course he stands out because he's the only white guy there and he's tall. Jake's supervisor is Emi Mariyama. She's giving a training to the new hires. She's basically saying, here's a manual, here's some examples of articles, use this format. You put who, what, where, when. And Jake asks, what about the why?
なぜは？
余裕がある時だけ最後に書きなさい。
余裕ってよくあるんですか？
まずないと思いなさい。
That was pretty funny. And also Jake's first indication that writing about crime in Japan isn't going to be exactly like what he thought it was going to be like. Okay, him calling her by her first name rings a little false. He would know not to do that. But I get what they're going for. We're supposed to kind of be experiencing the kind of fish out of water feelings, along with him. But she's like, the rules aren't different for you just because you're a foreigner. You treat me with the respect I deserve. You got about 1,000 hours to go before you call me by my first name. So then you see the big boss, whose name is Baku, and he's telling them that all the new reporters start on the police beat, and then he sees Jake. And Jake's like, who, me? Look at the guys next to him. Please be talking about him. So Baku looks disgusted because he hates foreigners, apparently, and tells him to get the hell out. But then this other guy kind of jumps in, tells him to basically take it down a notch. So they all go out to this bar. Everybody's having a great time. Jake kind of is off to the side. Nobody's talking to him. And then he sees his boss, Emmy, waving her arm over. He's like, oh, great, she wants to talk to me. But really, she just wants him to serve some drinks. So he does that. Two guys that he works with call him over. He starts talking to these guys, and they're getting along. And then Jake, points out that it's really effed up that their boss has to pour drinks for everyone all night. These guys are joking around, busting each other's chops, so Jake's found his work buddies. We see a dead body on a bridge. He's been stabbed multiple times. The lead detective comes on the scene, and Jake's really watching him. That is Detective Hiroto Katagiri. Everybody on the show smokes, and they smoke constantly. If you could get lung cancer watching a TV show, we're all screwed. Jake and his friends go to this press conference, and on his way there, this guy throws him against the wall. This other guy walks by, kind of helps him out, and just says, hey, he's one of the new reporters. So Jake's at this press conference, finding it a total waste of time, because no matter what anybody asks, the guy just says, just read what's in the press release. Basically, just write down what we tell you to write. And Jake's like, what the hell is this? Then he spots the detective who had helped him out earlier, the cool one who doesn't wear a suit like everybody else. And he asks his friend who it is, and his name is Miyamoto. So Jake is given his first assignment, which is to write up the details about the body on the bridge. Should be pretty straightforward, but he gets the address from the police report, and he goes to the guy's house. And he snoops through his mailbox and finds that he was in a ton of debt. So he copies down that interesting logo that he sees on one of the bills, and he goes to the address of the loan company and finds an empty building. So Jake writes up the article. Baku screams at Jake to come into his office and just starts lacing into him. It's not a murder unless the cops tell you it's a murder. The only thing you need to do is call the cops and write down what they say word for word. That's it. So Jake kind of slinks away, and then he kind of gives Emmy a hard time saying, why did you let this through? So then Jake tries to apologize, and Emmy's like, I don't want to hear it. But you kind of get your first glimpse that Emmy herself is not necessarily 100% okay with just writing down what the cops tell you to write down. So Jake finds Miyamoto at the police station and asks him to show him the ropes in terms of how things work between reporters and the police. So they wind up going out, and they go to this Hostess club named Onyx. Jake sees this guy with a massive tattoo on his arm in the bathroom, and of course he's inquisitive and lacking social awareness, so he asks, hey, did you get that done the old way? And I don't know what the old way is, but it looks bloody and painful, and the guy just gives him nothing, he just stares at him until Jake looks away. Jake goes back and sits down in the club. He's kind of looking around, and he sees the guy that he saw in the bathroom, and that guy is kind of acting like a tough guy. When he looks towards the stage, his expression just immediately softens, and it gets kind of sad, and Jake picks up on that, looks to the stage, and you see him go, oh. Her name is Samantha, and she's a hostess, so she's singing in Japanese the song Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses. Every time they show Sato, he just looks lovesick. Kind of tugs at your heartstrings. And it's hard to tell, is he actually in love with her, or is he just kind of sad and lonely and is looking for a connection with somebody? Jake asks Samantha for a drink, and she sits down. The boss comes over, asks if they want anything else. His name is Duke. Jake says, no, we're good. And of course the boss has a look on his face because he wants them to buy as much as possible. Jake and Samantha start talking. She finds out, about him being a reporter. She gives him a hard time about his outfit. And then Jake kind of starts spilling his guts about how it's been hard for him to try to fit in there, mentally draining. He said, but I can't just give up and go home, if you know what I mean. She goes, I know exactly what you mean. So very pointed there. So anyway, he starts asking her more personal questions, and she just kind of shuts it down and says, look, you want to talk to me, you got to buy. The more you buy, the more I talk. The better you buy, the better I talk. So you kind of figure out that's how the whole hostess thing works. You got to buy this expensive champagne to be able to talk to these women, I guess. So Jake and Miyamoto end up going to this strip club, and I loved the lighting in the scene, the colors and the silhouettes and everything. I just think that looks fantastic. But also, check out this strip club. I mean, the women are on a carousel on the stage, and there's this huge projection screen in the background. I mean, it just looks so elaborate, I think, anyway. So Jake is trying to talk to Miyamoto, and Miyamoto is just trying to talk to girls. Like, he's using Jake's line that he said to try to pick up foreigners. He's telling the waitress to bring us some champagne, and it's on him. And Jake is just like, what is with everybody that I try to talk to? They want me to buy this champagne that I can't even afford. But eventually Miyamoto does talk to him, and what he says is, here's what you need to know. There's no murder in Japan. Miyamoto tries to explain it in that unless there are witnesses, pretty much nothing's going to be called a murder, because then we'd have to investigate and our case clearance rate goes down and things like that. So he's trying to explain that to him, and then he gets a call, says, this is where gotta go. So he goes to this scene, and there's a guy outside by himself, and he's all wet and he's distraught looking, holding a match. And Miyamoto tries to talk him out of it, but the guy lights a match, sets himself on fire, and it's pretty horrific. Jake was there to see it, and afterwards he spots a box of matches, but look at the logo. It matches the logo of that lung company of the other guy who had died. He knows something's weird, something's linking, these cases together, and he takes the matches with him, which I don't know if he was supposed to do, but whatever. So he talks to his boss, and he's trying to say, hey, something, is going on. And she's like, don't investigate, just do the story you're assigned. You understand? And of course he says, yes, totally understood. But you can tell he's just not happy about that. He bribes this file clerk to get the case about the guy who lit himself on fire, finds out where he lives, and then he goes to see the guy's wife. And he discovers that people have been leaving horrible messages, like on their machine, and just harassing them. And then it turns out that after the man died, the calls stopped. So then you see Sato, and he's helping his mentor, whose name is Kume, get dressed for a ceremony where people are being promoted. You see Ashita, and that's their boss, and then he's saying, welcome to the Brotherhood and things like that. And then you see Jake, and he goes back to where the guy lit himself on fire, and he's thinking about it. So you can tell it's obviously bothering him, and he's going to continue trying to figure out what's going on there and what happened with that case. And that's the end of the pilot, directed by Michael Mann. I thought the pilot was great. It sucked me right in. I watched all the episodes as soon as they came out. The show is inspired by the book Tokyo Vice, written by Jake Adelstein. In the 1990s, Jake was the first American hired as a crime reporter for a huge Japanese newspaper. Ansel Elgort plays Jake Adelstein, and Ken Watanabe plays Detective Katagiri, and the whole cast does a really great job. The show was shot entirely on location in Tokyo, which was really important because Tokyo itself is such a huge character in the show. It would not have worked nearly as well if they had shot in another city or even another country and tried to pass it off as Tokyo. It just would not have worked that way. The cinematography is fantastic. It's just a beautiful looking show. I love the use of music in the show. They allow the songs to play a little longer than I think you would find in most other shows, and it really helps set the whole vibe and atmosphere of both the scene that the music is being used in, but just the entire show in general. I like how there's a little bit of everything, too. I mean, it's a drama, but I think it's pretty funny. It's a mix of journalism and investigative reporting, but there's also your traditional police crime drama, but it also shows the kind of inner workings of the Yakuza. You see how those three groups also work together, exchanging information. I find it really fascinating.